let's jump right into before he was president, also known as things you run on Wikipedia. Now, with William Henry Harrison, this is going to make up 99% of the show because only 1% of his life consisted of being president. Born on February 9th, 1773, in Berkeley Plantation, Virginia. That's right, we have another president whose family owned slaves, and he owned slaves too, so that sucks. He was the last president we ever had who was born in the American colonies. Everybody after that was well and truly born an American. His father was a very distinguished man who served as a 3-term governor of Virginia and signed the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
And his mother, oh yeah, America. His mother hailed from one of the most influential families of the American colonies. So he was one of several children, a very ritzy and well-connected family. Like they totes had George Washington over for dinner and, probably poker night or something.
Sure.
His dad wanted him to be a doctor, but he had his mind set on military goals. So he did what everyone does, which is wait until his dad died to pursue his dreams of joining the military.
I mean,
that went way dark there, but you know what? This is a time when life expectancy was about 39. So death was just all around the corner. So he was able to drop the name of his old family friend, George Washington, which definitely helped him earn a commission. There were like 40 people in America at the time. It wouldn't have been hard to drop names.
That's true.
So he started to distinguish himself as a very competent lieutenant in the Army and made a name for himself. Probably, again, dropping names like, hi, my dad signed the Declaration of Independence. Maybe make me captain. But at the same time that all this was happening, America was really starting to expand. So following the rousing victory of the Battle of Fallen Timbers, the Northwest Territory opened up. Now, for all of you listening, and you've listened to every episode, which I'm sure is all of you, and you're listening in order, you probably know that Derwin and I are good Midwestern nerds. And you're also probably wondering why the Great Lakes region of America is called the Midwest when several of those states kind of fall into Central Eastern time zone. The thing is, at the time, this was the northwestern part of America. We hadn't quite done the Western expansion yet. So this was kind of like, back in the 19th century, it was like, this was the West Coast. It's like, I'm going to go to the West Coast this weekend. I'm going to go to Minnesota.
I love how we just didn't update any of the terminology.
We have known that the New World wasn't India for hundreds of years. Derwin, what state are you from?
Indiana.
Indiana.
That's a fair point.
That is just how lazy they were with their naming conventions. It's like, oh, what should we name this new territory? Well, there's a lot of Indians here. How about Indiana?
I mean,
what should we name the capital? Indianapolis?
The metropolis of Indiana, yes.
Exactly. A beautiful city, by the way.
Beautiful city.
So Northwest Territory is opening up, and the problem is there's a lot of people that still, live there, the indigenous population.
Sure.
So William Henry Harrison moves out there to set up camp, start quote unquote peace negotiations with the indigenous population. There was a whole lot of really awkward situations like that I read about. Like he would undersell the land as he was selling it, or he would get meet up with the tribal leaders and be like, hey, have you tried alcohol before? Because it's the shit, man. He would get people drunk and get them to sell their land.
Oh no.
Oh yeah,
that's so terrible.
It is super shady. Like, I was reading, and it was like they were selling like land for like pennies on the acre. So William Henry Harrison has this interesting distinction because if like Derwin is from Indiana, I'm from Ohio, and William Henry Harrison is kind of from both.
Yeah,
largely because the country was sort of forming under his feet while all this was taking place. So you know what? We'll just call this one a draw and say he's both of our presidents. Even though Ohio just kind of disclaimed it. You guys have Benjamin Harrison. You guys are spoiled.
And like Ohio and Indiana were kind of the same territory at the time. Like there wasn't.
They're both really corny.
Yeah, like there wasn't a whole lot of like difference between them. So
both are generally assumed to be suburbs of Chicago anyway.
I mean, they are. Yeah.
So, but it's not all slavery and screwing over the indigenous population. There's also a love story here.
Oh.
So one of the other people that moved to this territory was Anne Sims, the daughter of a judge appointed to the Midwest. And as was the case with our last president elected in the 1840s, his father-in-law was, no, 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 don't marry a military man, honey. It'll screw you over. Which is something that has never changed, folks. So they did the right thing, which is they eloped without telling her dad.
Obviously.
But you know what? It paid off because she got to be first lady for 32 days. Everyone wins.
Does she?
Well, you know what? Ann Sims is in a unique position, and Anna Sims. I don't want to shortchange her because she was our first lady for a little more than a month, but she got like a bolo on this because it's like, yeah, she didn't really get to enjoy being first lady, but one of her grandkids, Benjamin Harrison, became president, so she got to be first grandma.
That's cool.
So it's like I don't even know if she was alive at the time, but it's like, cool. I got another shot at this. I can visit the White House.
There you go. I like how, because we did Ben Harrison a couple episodes back.
I like to call him Ben Harrison. Those you guys are buddies.
Well, here there's a very small army base here called Fort Benjamin Harrison. So we just call it Fort Ben Harrison. And but there's nothing there. It's a PX and an armory, and it's very small. Like there's no even like it's barely a base. You can just drive right through it, and you wouldn't even notice it's so small.
Fitting because it's named after Benjamin Harrison, a president that we've talked about and even forget about.
Exactly, because you see pictures of him in like street signs, and there's memorials here in Indianapolis for Ben Harrison. I didn't realize just how deeply interwoven his family is into the creation of the country, and the sort of Ben Harrison's grandfather signed the Declaration of Independence. His great grandfather Declaration of Independence. His grandfather was president for about 5 weeks, and then he was president. And I don't know if there's anything past Ben Harrison.
I'm actually Benjamin Harrison's grandson, so the legacy lives on.
That's
now the hardest part about that would be that I would be from Indiana then. Dum dum dum. It's all fun and games, folks. All right, so back to the 40 Americans who were alive at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So John Adams, our second president,
sure,
appointed William Henry Harrison to be Secretary of the Northwest Territory. So yeah, bottom line up front, he was a pretty cool officer and also super duper connected because it was just, imagine look at John Adams probably looked at the Declaration of Independence, scroll down like, is that Steve's kid? Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll make him the Secretary of the Northwest Territory.
Yeah.
So the territory split up into Indiana and Ohio territories, which would then eventually split up even further into Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And then once Indiana was its own territory, he served as governor for 12 years. Why do I have a feeling that there's a lot of elementary schools named after William Henry Harrison in the Hoosier State?
I think so. I didn't go to elementary school here, so I don't really know. But
for those of you who don't know, Derwin just made a fast line to college. Like in preschool, the guy like scored off the charts. Yeah. They said, you know what? We're not going to waste his time. Send him right to college.
I am, technically speaking, a robot sent back in time to kill John Connor.
Okay. Well, I am actually a member of the Resistance sent to destroy you. So it's fortuitous that we have a podcast together.
We got to go through all the presidents first, and then we can have our fight to the death.
Oh, that works for me. So let's get back to our ninth president.
Okay.
So as governor of Indiana, he secured legal claims to much territorial land from the indigenous population and improved roads and other infrastructure in the region.
The road part is good.
Yeah, if you are in Indiana right now and appreciating some very old, sturdy roads, you can thank William Henry Harrison for that. All right.
We call him Preparation H.
So now we get into the part where William Henry Harrison becomes a celebrity. And you're probably wondering if you heard us reference him at the top of the show as Old Tippecanoe. We're going to talk about the Battle of Tippecanoe that helped make this guy a household name, at least for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So the indigenous population obviously weren't too crazy about the fact that their land was being taken away from them and they were being exploited and all that stuff. So Tecumseh, who was a Shawnee chief, decided they should stand up for themselves, create a conglomerate of indigenous people and tribes work together. And they realized that the American empire was growing. So they said, well, why don't we get some support from America's number one enemy, the British? The British, by the way, really did not take to that whole losing the Revolutionary War thing well, and were constantly on the lookout for, well, let's see, maybe we can get this back. It's like any breakup, folks. You want to get your stuff back after the breakup, and so Tecumseh was planning to collaborate with the British to say, hey, if you work with us, we'll work with you. Can maybe you get some land back, we get some land back, everybody wins. William Henry Harrison, who was in charge of this territory, did not take lightly to this. So he actually did meet with Tecumseh in his governor's mansion. And they tried talking it out, but it turns out there's just a lot of uncomfortable bad blood between them. There was lots of threatening to, beat each other up in the governor's mansion.
Oh.
And so ultimately,
sounds productive.
No peace was, yeah. No peace was really brokered there. Then Governor Harrison was trying to plead with President Madison to fund a raid to stop this population and stop this growth, and also to stop the British from potentially starting a new war, which it didn't work.
When you say fund a raid to stop the population growth, what does that mean?
Well, as in to stop the indigenous people from staying where they were, to essentially what happened was they were trying to create a United Nations of first world nations.
Got it.
To stand up to the Americans.
Got it.
And so William Henry Harrison was in charge of this territory. So he was like, hey, President, could you give me some money? Could you give me some troops? Could you ammunition so that we can fight back against them?
Yeah. Okay.
So President Madison ultimately acquiesced. And one of the terms was that William Henry Harrison, who had already left the military at this point, would be commander of this raid.
Got it.
Which, I mean, the guy had been in the military for over a decade at this point, I believe 13 years. But you know what? A deal was a deal. Plus, he was the governor, so he got to call some of the shots.
Makes sense.
So 7 November 1811, William Henry Harrison brought in 950 or so troops to go in and kill the hell out of a lot of people at Camp Prophet. Camp Prophet was named for Tecumseh's brother, whose name I won't butcher out of respect for a guy who's dead.
Sure.
But his nickname was the Prophet.
Sure.
Now he is the brother is very important because he allegedly had made a claim that every American chief, his version of what we call the president, the commander in chief, I guess, that was elected in a year that ends in 0 would not survive his time in office.
Uh-oh.
That's right. We're getting into the creepy conspiracy theory stuff. And if you go on to enough of the websites that I did, there is some validity to this. I'll wait until we get to the whole death portion of it, because man, this is the before he was president thing, and we are not even to him being in Washington yet. So the Battle of Tippecanoe was a rousing success for Americans, and it continued into the War of 1812, in which the British came back to America to, fuck shit up.
Yeah.
And then at the Battle of the Thames, as in America, Thames, Tecumseh was killed too. So William Henry Harrison is a celebrity right off the bat. He was completely neglecting his military responsibilities too, from everything I read. As soon as he became a household name, Old Tippecanoe, he was going around on his victory tours in New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, getting parades and dinners and celebrations, because he was just the biggest rock star post-Revolutionary War. There was no pop culture back then. So as a result, American celebrities were American war heroes, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense in that the nation itself was born out of a military rebellion, and its initial celebrities, initial public figures, most public figures led a military rebellion against the greatest empire on the planet at the time. And so this is maybe 50, 60 years past that. It's kind of like post World War II. There's a lot of like John Wayne storms the sands of Iwo Jima, and that war was so influential and so impacting that it impacted our pop culture for generations after that. And so I
mean, just think about it. Inglourious Bastards was a huge hit. Gary Oldman won an Oscar a couple of years ago for playing Winston Churchill. I mean, pop culture in general loves war.
Yeah, it would make sense that our initial ones would be the founding fathers and Washington and Jefferson. And then, this might be skipping ahead a little bit. From what I understand, William Henry Harrison was trying to compare himself to Andrew Jackson and Washington and people like that.
Oh, yeah. Jackson comes up again real soon.
Mhm.
All right, so he does his big victory tour and all of that, and then decides to retire. So he does his big victory tour. He's traveling all around the country, getting the star treatment, and then decides to retire into North Bend, Ohio, which again, we can claim him as an Ohio president. But this is a military man. He does not rest easy.
Sure.
So he eventually runs and becomes a member of the House of Representatives for the state of Ohio from 1816 to 1819. After that, he managed to earn himself a position as a senator from Ohio from 1824 until 1828. What his time in DC was marked by was a lot of ambition. Now, I don't know enough about Anna Sims to know if she's kind of like the docile wife on the sidelines, or if she's got more of like a Florence Harding vibe to her, where she's like running the show behind the scenes. But I get the feeling that it was more William Henry Harrison calling the shots, and his wife is on the sidelines raising the kids and doing her thing. So she hasn't quite earned a spot on our list of first ladies that commanded a lot.
Sure.
But he eventually was able to earn himself a position as the ambassador to Colombia, a position that he largely botched. If no other reason than he publicly sided with the opposition to the president at the time, Simón Bolívar. I definitely butchered that guy's name. But so he right away goes there to be ambassador of Colombia, clashes with the president, and Andrew Jackson, who already famously didn't like William Henry Harrison very much, became president and removed him from his position as the ambassador. So he returned to Ohio to work on a farm, and I say work in quotation marks because the guy owned slaves. The slaves did all the work. He just got rich off them.
Yeah.
But he was still a famous name, and he was a respected general.
Sure.
So when the Whig Party was starting to gain some traction, by the way, I found out recently the origin of the Whig Party is that was the same name as a party in the UK that was anti-monarchy.
Okay.
So they had that in common. I was like, well, they hate the monarchy. We hate the monarchy. We hate the monarchy more because we kicked him out of the country.
Yeah.
So he ran for president in 1836. He didn't win, but he still managed to make a big positive impression. And he also managed to make a big impression with the Whig Party. So in 1840, for those of you listening at home, remember that whole years that end in zero rule?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. You can probably guess what happened in 1840. He got elected president. Now,
it's always the first mistake.
We would be remiss not to talk about his campaign, because every president, no matter how minor, made some enormous change in the way that our country is shaped. And with William Henry Harrison running for president in 1840, he did a lot to revolutionize the way that presidents campaign. If we had the rights to play this, but we don't, we would love to play you They Might Be Giants cover of Tippecanoe and Tyler 2.
That will be linked in the description of this episode.
It is a delightful cover, but it was an actual song that was used in the campaign, and it hit upon a lot of main points. I mean, so the president at the time was Martin Van Buren, who the Whigs described as Martin Van Ruin because of the Panic of 1837, in which it was a precursor to the Great Depression.
Sure.
So they also tried selling this image of Martin Van Buren as this out of touch Washington elite. And, it's like, oh, this guy wears fancy suits, when really you could have a true salt of the earth military man like William Henry Harrison, ignoring the fact that the guy was born on a plantation, was super rich for most of his life, and came from a family that was so well connected that his dad signed the Declaration of Independence. But they sold this idea of old Tippecanoe.
So they sold this guy as just like, he worked himself up from the coal mines, and then they sold him as Herbert Hoover, basically.
Yeah, that once, you know what? I want to make the weekly shout out to how awesome Herbert Hoover's life was.
Yeah.
We'll just make that a segment. But,
yes.
Herbert Hoover, who literally worked in a mine.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to shortchange William Henry Harrison's, career before becoming president, because by all accounts, he was a great military officer.
I just like how Herbert Hoover is the prototypical, like I'm going to be the American president. And I know we're covering Hoover again. He's from the last episode, but screw it. The guy was awesome. And so many campaigns try to paint their guy as poor guy who became rich, who adventured around the world, who married an amazing lady, right? And Harrison was a military officer, and he made great victories for his nation and stuff like that. And I don't want to take that away from him, but also like his daddy bought a lot of stuff, and it's kind of
The dude was connected.
Yeah, right. And granted, I'm not connected. If I was connected, I would probably use my connections, right? So, it's easy for me to be like, oh, you use your connections. Well, if I had any, I'd probably use them too. So I can't really blame him too much. But if I was a connected person and running for something, I'd say, hey guys, I'm really connected. But that's
by the way,
thing.
Take a shot every time he says connected, folks. It's the weekly drink, the monthly drinking game.
There you go.
So there's a couple of things he changed. So he introduced the idea of a presidential campaign song, which, by the way, we should absolutely bring back. Every presidential candidate should have a theme song.
Yes.
I mean, I think we should treat this like like WWE. You got your like entry song. It's like the debate happens.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be down for that. Back to the election of 1840. All right, so Martin Van Buren said that William Henry Harrison was this old coot. He was just this worn out veteran who just needed a cabin and some hard cider to get him through the day. Anyway, William Henry Harrison's camp was like, you know what? Let's use that. So the log cabin and hard cider approach was part of his campaign.
And he just needs a pension and some hard cider and a log cabin. That's all he wants. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome.
So William Henry Harrison turned it around and was like, yo, who would you rather drink hard cider with, bros? Another thing that I learned was that you've heard the expression, keep the ball rolling.
Yes.
So that is in regards to the campaign, because they had a 10-foot paper and tin ball emblazoned with Harrison slogans that they rolled down the street. Historians out there, if you can find me some graphic representations of that, because that sounds weird. I'm just picturing a 10-foot ball being rolled down the street with slogans on it, and that's some weird Alice in Wonderlandy imagery.
Yeah, if anyone wants to like link it in the comments, that'd be great.
Yeah, please let us all see what this ball that needed to roll looked like.
Yeah,
but they also
that's not a blanket request to put pictures of balls in the comment section, you degenerates.
That is for your OnlyFans page,
yes,
folks. But the Whigs also handed out cups, plates, flags, and sewing boxes championing William Henry Harrison. And all of it paid off because in 1840, William Henry Harrison was elected president by a slight margin. And now we get to the part where he dies, also known as him being president. So what I didn't mention, and neither did Derwin, is that William Henry Harrison was the oldest man elected to be president up till that time, and all the way up until Ronald Reagan beat his title in 1980. That title has also been topped twice by Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Yeah.
But he was 68 years old when he swore in as president. Again, life expectancy is like 40 back then.
Yeah.
So the dude was old by American standards.
That would be like being 105 now.
People keep trying to win that title of the oldest person elected president. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, as the oldest man ever elected president, he made sure that his inauguration showed off what hardcore dude he was. In addition to showing up on a horseback and not wearing a coat, a hat, or gloves, despite it being a freezing cold, rainy day, he also delivered a 1 hour and 45-minute speech, the longest inauguration speech to date.
Oh, no.
Well, actually, what's funny is before I knew much about William Henry Harrison, I just knew that my mom would bring him up whenever I didn't feel like wearing a coat because it was cold outside. It's like, oh, you know who else didn't wear a coat? William Henry Harrison, the president. He died because of it. Well, Mom, if you're listening, and you absolutely are, there's actually a lot of historical precedents say that he didn't really die of pneumonia, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So he has this huge speech. And by the way, because I love you all, I actually listened to the speech, so you don't have to. It's on YouTube, though, and it is highfalutin. That's the best way to describe it. It is a military man trying his best. And by the way, who ran on the everyman ticket, trying to sound as smart as humanly possible. And you know what? It's probably better written than anything I could come up with. So, you know
I
what? Credit where
mean,
credit's due.
yeah.
But I mean, listening to it on YouTube, I was like, just imagining what it would be like on a freezing cold, rainy day. And it's just like, yay! Oh, he's still going. He's still going. Okay.
Like it reminded me of change of command ceremonies we used to do.
Ooh,
And when I was a medic there's this change of command ceremony I was at, and I'm listening and I'm trying to keep my knees bent. I'm kind of like going back and forth. I'm kind of like my eyes are rolling in the back of my head. It's 45 minutes. We're in San Antonio, Texas. It's a bajillion degrees outside. And then it goes to the next guy and he rolls up. He goes, "Hey, I'm Colonel So and so. My guy over there is Sergeant Major, what's his name? If you got any questions for me, give him a call first, and we're here to take care of you. It's 105 degrees outside. I'll see you." And he bounces. It was 35 seconds. And I'm like, that's beautiful. Like that last guy talked for 45 minutes.
yeah. Sometimes brevity's okay.
Yeah.
If you got a 7 years ago speech, absolutely give the damn thing.
Yeah.
But not everything has to be Herculean in task.
Yeah.
So a few weeks after swearing in, William Henry Harrison starts to complain of being fatigued and constipated.
Uh-oh.
Dum, dum, dum. He, of course, decides to get the best doctors that America had to offer at the time, which is to say, not great, to address his being sick. Now, I have made jokes in the past about how the default reaction to everything was just bleed him.
Yeah.
But I found out, and that was the case for Zachary Taylor, but that was not the case for William Henry Harrison. Instead, they didn't really know much about anything back in the day. So what they did instead was, well, he's in pain. Give him some opiates. Yeah, he's constipated, bro. And opiates actually slow down your digestive system. So the dude's already full of crap, and you made him more constipated. So all of that poop is just collecting up in his digestive tract. And with nowhere to go, it starts to seep into his blood and he gets septic poisoning.
Didn't they give him mercury too?
Yeah, they just kind of gave him a whole bunch of stuff that hadn't been tested on animals yet and was like, that's fine. Now, the rumor that he died of pneumonia is supported by a few things. One, his doctor, Thomas Miller, said he had pneumonia. Possibly because he just didn't know how to diagnose anything else at the time. And it was
you couldn't write down blood demons, like.
Yeah, because blood demons, like that's what all the doctors were saying.
Yeah, it's with the opioids thing, right? And it's funny that we look back at that and like, we just scoff. We've tried that several times as a society. In the 90s, they're handing out like opioids like they were freaking candy. And we're paying for that now. We know 3 decades later, like, hey, maybe don't give out opioids for every single, like some things, yes, but don't give out highly addictive painkillers for you don't need it if you stub your toe. And we were giving it out for like stub toes and like, oh, trees make me sad. Here's some Percocet, right?
Well, I mean, the good thing is we didn't have to worry about him becoming addicted to, any opioids because the dude died.
There's that. There's
32 days after swearing in.
Yeah.
So on April 4th, 1841, William Henry Harrison passed away. And a really sad detail is that his wife, Anna, never even got to live in the White House.
Oh, that sucks.
She was packing up the bags. There was a big move going on. So she didn't even get the fun parts about being a first lady.
Yeah. And her husband died.
Oh, well, yeah, that too. That sucks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the whole portion about how academics that are smarter than me think he died. Yeah. I read a lot of think pieces about, what actually killed him. Have come under review and to say, because William Henry Harrison is most famous for dying. So, you know what? If you're going to research anything about it, it's going to be the dying part. But what is interesting is that every president who served who was elected in the 1840s died prematurely. And I know we said that he's super old, but the point is there was William Henry Harrison elected in 1840, who died in the Oval Office, obviously. But then in 1844, James Polk was elected president. He didn't die in the Oval Office, but he died 3 months after leaving the Oval Office. Oof. And then there's Zachary Taylor, who we talked about in the previous episode, who was elected in 1848, who also, died in office after eating some bad cherries. But there's a theory about why all three died because they all had very similar symptoms. And that is because of the poor quality of water in the White House. So
Yep.
for a time being there, living in the Oval Office was one of the most dangerous jobs on Earth. And the explanation is that midnight soil, also known as the shit and piss water, was dumped into a fetid marsh 7 blocks upstream from the White House's water supply.
Yep.
So talk about drain the swamp.
Yeah.
So all these presidents that are dying prematurely in the Oval Office or right after leaving, it's because they got too much E. coli poisoning.
I learned about contaminating water and stuff I had some brief classes, right? And it was basically like medic, and when I was a medic, setting up like triage stations and stuff like that, and like, oh, what if there's like a biological chemical attack, and what if you have to keep that sort of thing in mind, like oh, we're getting our water from that area, but the gas was let loose on that area over there, so there's a potential for water to have that whatever attack it was.
Folks, take care of planet Earth.
Yes.
So after he died, his vice president, the Tyler of Tippecanoe and Tyler II, took over as president for the rest of his term and then faded right into obscurity.
Oh, no.
How many people? I forgot about John Tyler, and I co-host a show about presidents.
Well, we haven't covered him yet. Have we covered him yet?
We have not. That is how obscure this guy is. We may have covered him and just forgot he existed.
I'm also the editor of the podcast, so I should really know because I listen to these things about 5 times.
This is the unfortunate thing about covering obscure presidents.
Yeah.
That aren't Herbert Hoover, who, I'm pretty sure Darwin and I have already commissioned an AMC miniseries about.
I don't feel attraction to many men, but Herbert Hoover might be one of them. But don't tell my wife I said that.
I will not. So one thing I touched upon, and this is pretty eerie, is the curse of Tippecanoe.
Oh, no.
And we talked about it earlier in the show about how every president who was elected in a year that ended in 0 died prematurely. Now, 1840, William Henry Harrison gets elected and dies of not quite pneumonia, also known as gastroenteritis. I'm not a medical professional, folks. He got too much crap in his system and it got in his blood.
Like the tubes that go up to your pooper is inflamed. That's what gastroenteritis basically is, in my dumb sort of grunt medic perspective.
You're better with the terminology than I am. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln gets elected president, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but he got assassinated in his second term. And then in 1880, James Garfield gets elected president. He also gets assassinated. In 1900, William McKinley gets elected. He gets assassinated. In 1920, our buddy Warren G. Harding gets elected president and doesn't get murdered by his wife in San Francisco.
Someone got Epsteined.
In 1940, Franklin Delano Roosevelt gets elected president. Re-elected president, really.
Mm-hmm.
And he does not live to see the end of his 4th term because he dies from an aneurysm.
Wasn't he like president for like 15 years or something? And then
dude, that's a horrible job time. Like a long time to have the worst job in the world.
During the Depression, and then the Apocalypse War. That was the Second World War.
I think his brain just quit.
Yeah.
Ooh, unfortunate segue into our next president.
Oh no.
In 1960. John F. Kennedy gets elected president, and spoiler alerts, he also gets assassinated. All right, and that kind of wraps up the curse of Tippecanoe because in 1980, Ronald Reagan gets elected president. He survives an assassination attempt, and then in the year 2000, George W. Bush gets elected president. He also survives an assassination attempt that took place in the country of Georgia.
Wait, hold on.
I'm not talking about the shoe.
George, they try to kill like W or his dad?
W.
Because I know that Saddam tried to kill his dad, but
no, in I think it was the year 2006 or 2007. He went on a trip to Georgia, and someone threw a grenade onto the stage that he was on with the president of Georgia, the grenade didn't go off.
Oh shit!
So another one averts the curse of Tippecanoe. And then
Okay.
in 2020, Joe Biden gets elected. So regardless of what your politics are, let's hope he has a nice, healthy, long life.
Just a nice, boring 4 years where nothing exciting happens. That'd be great.
It seems as though the curse of Tippecanoe has worn out, or at least it skipped a few.
There you go.
So now we get to the super important questions. Derwin, do you think his 32 days in office warrants a higher place in American esteem?
No, not really.
Yeah, through no fault of his own, he kind of earns his obscure president status.
Nah. More of a historical footnote at this point.
Yeah, a cautionary tale about giving constipated people heroin.
And mercury.
Yeah,
The stuff that's known to poison people.
I mean, yeah, it gave him it gave him new problems to worry about.
Fuck. There's so much going on there.
All right. Now, in honor of Warren G. Harding nicknaming his penis Jerry, what do you think William Henry Harrison nicknamed his penis?
Just the tip.
Oh, very nice.
Yep.
For mine, I found a quote of his when his father-in-law said, "How do you expect to support my daughter?" William Henry Harrison said, "Sir, my sword is my means of support." Now, I assume he was talking about his penis, so I'm going to say his nickname was My Sword.